Let's go, baby. Welcome to the Athletes and Assets podcast. I'm your host, Noah Lack, and I bring on elite athletes to chat about a business topic. Whether it's venture capital, retail, sales, crypto, your favorite athletes know a lot more about business than you think. But how would you know that from just watching mainstream media? You're going to learn a topic of business here, but you're also going to learn a lot about the athletes themselves. Tune in. Please like, subscribe, give us a follow, because we're bringing the heat. Let's get it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Let's go. I'm joined by Timothy Lamb, who was a 3-time Pan American Junior Champion, a 7-time U.S. Junior National Champion, the former #1 national ranked U.S. men's singles badminton player, a member of the 2019 U.S. Pan American team, a 2021 U.S. Olympic team member, and Timothy is joining us today. But Timothy, before we dive into what you're doing, man, we got to skip the small talk, okay? In 2021, you were at the Olympics, and I saw you were kicking it with KD, right? You were kicking it with Kevin Durant and all these athletes. Did you get to share with them some of your badminton tricks?
You know, funny question. I think I was a little too nervous when I met them. Unfortunately, they were living not in the Olympic Village, but I think when I met them, I was a little too awestruck in my opinion. You know, when you see so many top NBA athletes, I was just like so in shock. But now that you bring it up, I do regret not bringing up badminton.
I mean, you know, pickleball is like the new investment wave. I don't want to make you have any sense of regret, man, but like, you know, Katie's a big pickleball investor. That could have been badminton, my guy.
I know.
It's all good. It's all good, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I recently just learned this, and this is crazy because in badminton, right, you have the racket, you have the net, and you have what's called the bird, correct?
Yeah.
Which you hit. The speed of which you guys hit the bird on your racket is faster than Formula One car racing. Around mid 400 kilometers per hour is sort of the top speed we've seen when you hit the bird in badminton. Can you speak to like the hand-eye coordination you have to be able to actually hit the ball?
Yeah, well, it definitely takes a lot of practice. I think when you swing your racket, you have to you generate a lot of your power from your arms, and then it eventually comes off from your wrist. But I think it obviously takes practice, right? From a junior athlete to an adult athlete, you generate power through your smash as you get older, right? You generate more power in terms of physical strength. And I think when you reach that level where you're able to create that type of power, especially at that speed, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Last week, badminton, I think someone just exceeded the world record for like over 400 kilometers per hour, which, I mean, when I still think about it, it's pretty mind blowing. But yeah,
that's
it
insane.
Takes practice. Yeah,
that's double. It's almost double the speed of like tennis serves. Because tennis, I think, is around 130, 150 ish miles per hour, if I'm not mistaken, which is fast as hell. And like this is, I mean, this is pushing. That's over 200 miles per hour. If I'm doing my calculation correctly. I wasn't a math. You're the numbers guy here, right? Like I'm not. You're the auditor. Like I'm not. But it just gave me such a healthy respect for your craft in your game.
Yeah. No, thank you. It definitely takes a lot of good eye-hand coordination. I mean, when you're the one smashing, it feels nice, right? But when you're on the other side, you just need to have really good like quick reactions, right, and quick reflexes, which I do pride myself on. I feel like I have good reflexes, but yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Is that something you like? Do you think that's the most important athletic quality of a badminton Olympian is the ability to quickly naturally react? Or is it actually more of the more typical athletic traits that we associate an athlete with, which is like lateral quickness, jumping, strength, you know.
Yeah, I definitely say it's a combination of like all traits, right?
Okay.
I think reaction. I mean, I think a lot of other sports have. I feel like has good reaction too. Power. I think your core muscle is really important in all sports. But yeah, I would say I think quickness, reaction is like one of the traits that is very evident in like all kinds of sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make sure we cover this one as well. That Tokyo Olympic experience, man. I mean, how incredible is that to represent the United States in badminton, excuse me. But you also mentioned, off air that there was also the unique component of you didn't know exactly when the games were going to be played because of the pandemic and the postponement of things. It's already stressful enough to prepare for the Olympics, but throw the pandemic in it and the uncertainty of when you're going to play mixed in with like the rest of your life and like needing to figure stuff out. I mean, how did you sort of handle all of that?
Yeah, so it's funny because I actually found out I officially qualified for Tokyo 10 days before I left.
Wow.
And so, which is pretty crazy, right, in terms of preparation.
Wait, 10 days before the Olympics, you found out you're going to the Olympics?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's insane.
It's a little weird, right, for badminton. I think in all sports it's different, but for badminton, we typically qualify through a world ranking, right? And so the year leading up to the Olympics is like our time window to qualify. And so then by that deadline, which is usually like a month before the Olympics, you find out whether you qualify or not based on your world ranking.
Right.
And so I think in my case it was a little unique because I was sort of like in the borderline of like making it and not making it. And so I think they had to like, I don't know, it's all really complicated stuff, but they had to like find out like towards the last minute, okay, I'm officially qualified, now you can go. But I think for me, I always kind of had a feeling that I would qualify, and so I just basically trained and competed with that mindset. And then like you said, the postponement of the Olympics just made everything so much harder, right? I think in terms of, planning your the next few years of your life, and just training, like finding that motivation to train and compete while everything is so uncertain, with everything like so imbalanced, I think was a huge mental challenge for me. And so I think my mindset was just sort of okay, just take it day by day, do what I can, don't forget why I started the journey in the first place, which was really just to enjoy the process, right? I think that was kind of how I approached it.
Absolutely, man. That's incredible. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yes, sir.
You sounds like you embody that pretty well, considering you've got pretty short notice to go across the world to compete in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. All right, keep it 100. Be honest with me here. As you're walking out in the opening ceremony as an Olympian with all the big dogs, Team USA on your chest, the whole world is watching you. Did you ever imagine that like a year or two later you'd be sitting at a desk at KPMG doing accounting?
I did. I mean, on paper, like in terms of my flesh, like I knew, okay, I'm gonna be working full time, a full time office job, 9 to 5 office job after the Olympics, right? But then in my heart, like in my mind, deep down, I knew that the transition was gonna be dramatic. And then after working a few months at KPMG, like my anticipation was correct. Like that making that transition from being a full-time athlete to like working a full-time job was just very, very challenging. It's like a different challenging from being an athlete.
How so?
I think like, cause like you're sitting at your office all day, right? From when you're an athlete, you have breaks in between, right? You're training, and then you have competing, and then everything's like sort of like a routine. It's the same with like working a full-time office job, but like when you're looking at your monitor all day, taking calls in between, I think as athletes we're not used to like sitting put all day, right?
The challenge with this, it sounds anticlimactic. Like, look, you're not going to battle with a fellow competitor in badminton. You're going to battle with yourself being able to remain focused and like not sleeping on at your desk at your 9 to 5. That's a whole thing to transition into.
I think it's like a different kind of focus. I think in sports we have like downtime in between, like our training, competing. But I think when you're working like a full-time job, it's making that learning curve in terms of like a technical knowledge. I think is something to administer like when you start working.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Timothy. So what we're gonna do here, man? You work for KPMG. You're a senior audit associate there. Like, this is a special moment. Why is it a special moment? Because we are going to break this down and explain why accounting is so important and bring some juice into this thing. But before we do that, Timothy, I'd actually like to do a little bit of rapid fire. So I want to ask you a couple of really quick questions to get everyone up to speed on a couple of basic things. So what is KPMG? Who is KPMG?
Yeah, so KPMG is one of the big four accounting consulting firms. They are a third-party firm that basically helps public companies, do advisory services. They provide tax services, audit services, just to name a few of the major things that they do. And so for me, I specifically work in audit, which for those that don't know, audit is basically applying accounting through the audit of public companies or like private companies' financial statements. So like before a public company releases their financial statements, that's where audit comes in. So like as part of our job, we have to do our reasonableness check and like fraud check, basically just to see if the numbers that they release out to the public, whether it's their investors, their creditors, regulators, we basically provide them assurance that okay, we've done our check of these numbers. Like what they're releasing to the public is accurate. It's no fraud.
And your exact job title is
a senior audit associate.
Audit associate. And where are you living right now? Where are you working?
Yeah, so I'm currently based in Northern California, specifically in the heart of Silicon Valley, Bay Area.
Because there's a lot of big companies there that presumably are your clients, and maybe that's where you grew up as well. We could throw that in there. But exactly. Okay, great. How long have you been doing this for?
So shortly after the Olympics, I'd say about September of 2021, I started working full time up until now, which is almost hitting the 2-year mark. Fantastic.
So you got Timothy at KPMG working on the audit team in accounting. But man, what does this all mean, man? What does this all mean? Timothy, can we take a step back here and break down maybe some basic accounting principles that anyone who wants to be either a small business owner or works for a large corporation, like this is like mandatory stuff. Where can we start here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe to start off, I can sort of describe why I chose accounting in the first place.
Okay.
So I think at first I always knew that I wanted to do something business related. And I chose accounting specifically because, good job security, right? Every company needs an accountant. But I think after working in audit at KPMG for some time now, my perspective of it has sort of changed a bit. Going into a little accounting lecture here, but as they say, accounting is the language of business. The purpose of a business is.
Ooh, say that one more time. Wait. Say that one more. We need to hear that again.
Accounting is the language of business. So the purpose of a business is to make money, and in order to do that, you have to manage your finances, whether it includes keeping track of your income, your expenses, right? And then depending on if your business is at the public level or not, you'll have a set of financial statements or financial records, right? Which provide, the public, your investors, creditors, regulators, assurance, which can be useful in making significant business decisions. Accounting, specifically audit, which is what I do, provides the basis for those financial records. And then having that knowledge of accounting, I feel like it assists you in making strategic planning process, because you already have like a deep knowledge of what those numbers that make up those financial statements are. You know what specific transactions those numbers are made of, right?
Right.
I feel like learning accounting can be a little tedious sometimes, right? With all you have your T accounts, your debits, credits, which is all
I always got tripped up on the debits and credits, man. I couldn't tell you what a debit and a credit was, and but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it is a little bit tedious, but I feel like once you understand like the building block for those, like why you have those debits and credits and like those T accounts, I feel like everything else starts to make so much more sense, right? Without accounting, businesses cannot survive. And then, like you said, it is a little underrated in my opinion, right? Whenever people think of accounting, they start to go to sleep, right? But I think it's because a lot of people tend to only look at the glamorous finance or marketing side of a business. You know, like that's usually where like all the people make the big money, right? Investment banking, you have your private equity, all that stuff. But I think a lot of people forget that, to make a business survive, you need accounting, right? Without having those basic accounting knowledge, like those debits and credits, you'll be able to better understand how a business operates from the inside out, from a financial perspective.
Yeah, and absolutely. Like, you want to build a good business, you want a profitable business, you want you want a business that you can scale and grow. If you don't have proper bookkeeping in place and knowing where your money's going in and out of, you are screwed. You need accounting. And what does your typical day look like for Timothy Lamb?
So usually it really depends on like how busy we are, but like let's say if I were to start the beginning of a new audit of a new client, typically we would try to get like a better understanding of each of the company's business process, whether that's their sales, their payroll, their expenses, their inventory, their equity, their cash and debt, basically everything you can imagine as part of like the building blocks of a company's financial statements, from their income statement to their balance sheet. Basically, we try to get a basic understanding, I wouldn't say like too into depth, but like a basic understanding of how the process works, right? You could say like every company has like a very similar way of accounting for like revenue or their sales, for example, but it really does vary from company to company. So usually that's what happens at the beginning, is we try to get an understanding of how their process works. And then from that point on, we do what we call this like substantive test, where we, because like a company, they have like their numbers, like the clients that we audit, usually their numbers are like in the millions. So usually
that's big. You're working with some big money.
For sure. But yeah, I would say like, because those numbers are like pretty big, those numbers that consist of that number is usually like a pretty big population. And so like what we would do, because we don't have, all the time in the world to really analyze in depth all those transactions that make up that million, we would take like a sample of that million, and then based on that sampleness, reasonableness check, we would make a deduction, make a conclusion that, okay, their payroll is, how much they're paying out to their employees, for example, is accurate and reasonable. And then usually if there's like a prior year audit, we could sort of like analyze the trend between prior years and then compare it. So in a way, like we do like a little bit of like, we do act as like sort of like a financial analyst. Obviously not in that big of a depth, but that's sort of like the gist of what we do.
What's the most exciting part of your job? Like what is the coolest part? Obviously you deal with a lot of numbers. Not everyone's a numbers guy. That's okay. But you're working with some pretty cool companies, for one. That's what I see on the outside looking in. But two, what is like the coolest thing you get to see when you go through a company's balance sheet?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think working with different clients from like different industries, especially being here in the Silicon Valley Bay Area, a lot of our clients are from the tech industry, and so like a lot of their products that they make is very very interesting. AI is a very big thing recently, and I think a lot of our clients are in the AI industry. So like a lot of their services and products that they provide is very cool, right? I think just like from a public standpoint, I think it's just very interesting.
Are you allowed to say the clients you work with?
Yeah. So I think this client that I'm on right now, they're called Shield AI. Um, Basically, they do like they make artificial intelligence for like those Navy like Shield drones, basically. And so that's kind of like that's currently the
It's kind of
client
sick.
that I'm on. It is pretty sick.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, here's where I'm going with this. There's two companies that I'm trying to see the underbelly of. I need to see financials from these companies. OpenAI, because they raise like millions and millions of dollars, maybe billions, and like I want to understand how much revenue they're actually taking in. Like we understand the functionality. Like you and me probably use ChatGPT, at least once a week or once a day. But how is that making them like a lot of money? Number two, Twitter, because Elon's just pissing me off, and like I want to see actually if the changes that he's made has actually worked. So those are two balance sheets. I need to see the Carfax there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say like having like working in audit, you really get to see like you see the balance sheet has a certain number, but like what makes up that number, right? Or like you see the revenue is like in the billions, so like what makes up that number? Like what are the majority of their customers? Like what are they selling to like get so much revenue? And so I that's kind of where I find the beauty of like working in audit. It's like you just learn so much, right? You learn how a company does their ins and outs every day.
Yeah. Have you worked with any media companies before?
Not that I'm aware
It's okay
of.
if you
I don't
haven't.
think so, yeah. I don't think so. Yeah.
It's all good. I just wanted to see if you could predict the financial projections of what I'm doing based on a bigger media company who's has a big revenue source.
Maybe that could be my next client. I'll let you know.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. Do all the folks that you work with, are they all really good at crunching numbers, or is this or can you be a good accountant without being a math whiz?
Honestly speaking, I feel like when you first start off in accounting, whether it's an audit or tax, I think you sort of develop an accounting knowledge, like a numbers accounting knowledge as you progress. I do feel like once you sort of reach that manager level, that senior manager level, you need to have like a decent composition of an accounting knowledge. But I think when you do start, you obviously do need to know like the basics, right? Like your debits, credits.
Right.
You need to know how to like read a company's financial statements, which I think is obviously very crucial, right? And so I think having that knowledge early, like before you start like working full time, I think it will do you more good than bad, right?
So it doesn't hurt to know math before you jump into accounting.
Absolutely. I mean, forget about doing your job. I think doing your own taxes, I think can go a long way. I think just being able to like read checks that come in, your bank statements that come in through the mail. I think just knowing having that knowledge will give you an edge, right? And then not to mention like if you want to like invest in stocks or buy a house, for example, right? I think those can only benefit you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on and joining the podcast, and I hope at least one person after listening to this has a new respect for accounting and realizes that without it, you don't really have like functioning business. And so I want to end this podcast by saying accounting is the language of business.
I think, like I said, I think a lot of people sort of undermine what accounting really is. And I think whether you decide to go into business or not, I think having that sort of accounting knowledge, whether it's in your high school or your college, I think will really give you an edge in not only like your future work, but I think just for like living out your daily life, right? Knowing how to read numbers, knowing how to interpret numbers in a way that's different from how the public views it, I think can go an extremely long way.
Timothy Lamb, former Olympian turned your accountant. I would trust this guy managing my company's financial balance. Timothy, thank you so much for joining me, my man.
No, thank you.